After World War II, German prisoners in America were treated better than black Americans working next to them. Meanwhile, in France, prisoners were literally starving on less food than people in the Warsaw Ghetto got. Your entire fate came down to one thing. Who captured you? Okay, so if you're here a lot, you know I ask for likes and subscribes, but seriously, where are you guys? We're heading to May 1945 in a minute. First though, get comfortable. Seriously, take a second. Adjust whatever needs adjusting. You're not going to want to move once we start. It's dawn. Late April 1945. Somewhere in what used to be Germany, the sound of American tank tracks grinding closer pulls Klaus from sleep. He's huddled in the basement of a destroyed farmhouse with 12 other soldiers. The smell hits him first. Smoke from the burning village, gunpowder from yesterday's shelling, unwashed bodies pressed too close together, and underneath it all, that metallic smell of fierce sweat that everyone pretends not to notice. His back screams from sleeping on bare concrete. The Wehrmacht uniform he's wearing hasn't been washed in 6 weeks. There's a hole in his left boot where water seeps in with every step. He's 22 years old, and he already knows how this ends. The tanks are maybe half a kilometer away now. Someone in the corner is crying quietly. Carl, probably, kid's 19, joined up 8 months ago, thinking there was still something to fight for. Still had that look in his eyes like maybe, just maybe, they could turn this around. That look died somewhere around March. They're Americans, Franz whispers from the doorway. He's been keeping watch, not Russians. The relief in the room is physical. You can feel 12 men exhale at once. Americans, not Soviets. That one detail would change everything. Klaus doesn't know it yet, but in a few hours, he'll surrender to soldiers from Ohio and Pennsylvania. Farm boys mostly. One of them will offer him a cigarette. Another will share chocolate from a ration pack. Within a week, he'll be sleeping on an actual cot in a processing center. Within a month, he might be working on a farm in Georgia, watching American movies on weekends, earning actual pay. But if those tank tracks belonged to Soviet forces, the next year of his life would look very different. Frozen labor camps in the Ural Mountains, building sites in Siberia, a 1 in 3 chance of dying before ever seeing home again. Your fate as a German soldier in May 1945 wasn't determined by what you did during the war. It was determined by who got to you first. Klaus crawls to the doorway next to Franz. Through the smoke and morning mist, he can see the olive-green shapes rolling down the village road. 3 Sherman tanks, infantry following behind. Rifles ready, but not urgent. They're not expecting much resistance. Smart, there isn't any to give. We're done, Klaus says. It's not a question. Franz nods. He's 38, a baker from Hamburg before all this. Been fighting since Poland in 1939. 6 years of war, sitting in his eyes like old ghosts. We were done weeks ago. We just didn't admit it yet. Back in the basement, someone's trying to decide if they should destroy their identification papers. You can hear the argument in frantic whispers. Asterisk, they'll think we're SS if we don't have papers. They'll shoot us if they think we're SS. The papers prove we're Wehrmacht. The papers prove we were there when asterisk, shut up, both of you. That's Hauptmann Weber, officer, old school military, the kind of guy who still believes in following orders, even when the orders stopped making sense months ago. He's the senior man here, which means technically he should make the call on when to surrender. But he's been making no calls about anything since his son was killed at the Ruhr pocket 3 weeks ago. Now he just sits in corners and stares at nothing. Klaus makes the decision for everyone. I'm going out there, he says loud enough for all 12 men to hear. Hands up, white flag if anyone's got something white. I suggest you all come with me, because those tanks have seen this building, and they're going to start shooting soon. Nobody argues. Nobody has the energy to argue anymore. Finding something white is harder than it should be. Everything they own is gray or brown, or that specific shade of dirt that comes from living in holes in the ground. Finally, Carl tears a piece off his undershirt. It's off-white at best, more like gray-white, but it'll have to do. 12 men file out of the basement into the pale morning light. Klaus goes first, hands above his head, holding that sad excuse for a white flag. The others follow in a loose line. They look like what they are: beaten, exhausted, hungry in a way that makes your bones ache. Klaus hasn't had a proper meal in 3 weeks. The Wehrmacht supply chain collapsed in March. Since then, it's been whatever you could scavenge, steal, or trade for. Your stomach doesn't just growl anymore. It cramps, it twists. It makes you think about food constantly, obsessively, the way you used to think about girls or beer or anything normal. The American soldiers spot them immediately. Rifles come up. Sharp commands in English that Klaus barely understands. He recognizes the tone, though. Asterisk, stop, don't move, hands where we can see them. Asterisk, he complies. They all comply. What else are you going to do? An American sergeant approaches, rifle leveled at Klaus's chest. Young guy, maybe 25. He's chewing gum, which Klaus finds weirdly fascinating. Who has gum during a war? Americans, apparently. Americans have everything. Sprechen Sie English? The sergeant asks. His German is terrible but comprehensible. A little, Klaus responds. You shoot? It's a genuine question. Some units do, some don't. Depends on mood. Depends on what they found in the last town. Depends on whether anyone's buddy got killed yesterday. War isn't clean. International law is just ink on paper when you're standing in a field deciding what to do with 12 enemy soldiers who could have killed your friends last week. The sergeant looks at them for a long moment, taking in the torn uniforms, the obvious hunger, the kid who can't stop crying, the officer who looks dead behind the eyes. Nah, he says finally, we're not going to shoot you. War's over anyway. Just waiting for Berlin to figure it out. Another soldier comes up, says something to the sergeant in English. Klaus catches maybe one word in 5. The sergeant nods, and gestures at Klaus and the others with his rifle. Your pose now. Prisoners of war. We're going to search you, take any weapons, then move you back to the processing center. You cooperate. Nobody gets hurt. You try something stupid. Well, he shrugs. Don't try something stupid. Klaus translates for the others. Nobody tries something stupid. Nobody has the energy. The search is thorough, but not rough. They take Klaus's pistol, his bayonet, even the Hitler Youth knife he's been carrying since he was 15. He's almost relieved to be rid of it. One American soldier finds some photographs in Carl's pocket. Pictures of Carl's family, mother, father, 2 sisters. The soldier looks at them for a second, then hands them back. Small mercy. They take Hauptmann Weber's officer's cap and insignia. He doesn't react, just stands there like a man-shaped hole in the air. Then they're marching. Klaus and his 11 companions, surrounded by American soldiers, heading away from the front lines toward whatever comes next. Nobody knows what comes next. The rumors have been flying for weeks. Asterisk Americans treat you decent. British are fair. French will work you to death. Russians, you don't come back from the Russians. 1/3 don't come back anyway. The other 2/3 come back different, broken, hollowed out. Klaus keeps his head down and puts one foot in front of the other. His left boot squelches with every step, still leaking. Doesn't matter now. The walk takes about an hour. They pass through what used to be a town. Now it's just rubble and smoke, and the occasional wall standing alone like a tombstone. An old woman watches them from a doorway. Her expression is hard to read. Anger, relief, exhaustion, probably all 3. The processing center is set up in what used to be a school. Americans everywhere. Trucks, jeeps, supply depots, medical tents. It's organized chaos. Efficient chaos. The kind of logistics that win wars. They're herded into a courtyard with maybe 200 other German soldiers. All of them captured in the last few days. All wearing the same expression. That weird mix of relief and fear. Relief? The war's over. Fear about what that actually means. An American officer with a clipboard starts calling out questions in broken German. Name, rank, unit, where you were captured. Klaus answers honestly. No point lying. They'll figure it out eventually anyway. Any SS? The officer asks louder. Anyone here SS? Silence. If there are any SS mixed in with the regular Wehrmacht. They're smart enough not to admit it. SS prisoners face different tribunals, harsher treatment. The Americans and British are still finding the camps, still counting the bodies, still trying to understand the scale of it. Klaus never served with the SS, never wanted to. He was just regular army, conscripted in 1943, trained for 3 months, shipped east, fought, retreated, until there was nowhere left to retreat to. He's one of the lucky ones. He was fighting on the Western Front when he got captured, not the Eastern Front where things got really bad, where both sides stopped pretending there were rules. A medic comes around checking for serious injuries. Klaus has a cut on his hand that's probably infected, but nothing life-threatening. The medic cleans it, applies something that stings like hell, bandages it, hands in 2 aspirin, and moves on. That's more medical attention than Klaus has received in 6 months. They're given food, real food, bread, some kind of stew that's mostly potatoes and mystery meat. But it's hot, and there's enough of it. Klaus eats slowly. Your stomach shrinks when you're starving. Eat too fast, and you'll just vomit it back up. He learned that the hard way last month. Around him, other prisoners are whispering, trading information, rumors, hopes. Asterisk, I heard they're sending everyone back home within a month. You're dreaming. Geneva Convention says they can hold us until peace is officially declared. I heard they're making us rebuild everything we destroyed. I heard the French are executing prisoners. That's nonsense. You hear what happened to the guys captured in Alsace. Asterisk, Klaus tunes it out. He's too tired for rumors. Too tired for hope or fear or anything but this. He's alive. He's not fighting anymore. He has food in his stomach and a bandage on his hand. And he's not sleeping in a basement waiting for artillery shells. For the moment, that's enough. An American soldier walks by, and Klaus catches himself thinking about the guy's boots. Leather. Actual leather. No holes, no water seeping in. Americans have boots that work. They have cigarettes and chocolate and chewing gum. They have trucks that run and tanks that don't break down. And an entire ocean protecting their homeland from getting bombed to rubble. No wonder they won. Night falls and they're moved into a large building. Former gymnasium. Maybe there are blankets. Thin ones, but blankets. Actual blankets. Not coats or newspapers or whatever you could scavenge. Klaus claims a spot against a wall, wraps himself up, and closes his eyes. Sleep comes fast. He dreams of home. Hamburg before the war. His father's shop. The smell of fresh bread in the morning. His mother humming in the kitchen. His sister Anna chasing the cat through the apartment. Normal things, things that might not exist anymore. Hamburg got bombed badly. He doesn't know if his family's alive or dead. Mail stopped getting through months ago. He'll find out eventually, once they figure out what to do with 11 million prisoners. 11 million. That's the number he heard someone say earlier. 11 million German soldiers in Allied custody at the end of the war. 8 million held by the Americans and British, 3 million in Soviet hands. 11 million men whose fates now depend on international law and political calculations, and the basic question of what do you do with the army of a country that just tried to conquer the world? Klaus is one of 8 million who got captured by the Western Allies. The Americans specifically, he doesn't know it yet. But this single fact being captured by Americans instead of Soviets, ending up in a schoolyard in Germany instead of a frozen camp in Siberia, This is the thing that will let him survive the next 2 years. This is the thing that will let him see home again. But that's later. Right now, wrapped in a thin American blanket, in a former school in a destroyed country, Klaus just sleeps. And for the first time in 6 years, he's not worried about being woken up by artillery fire. Klaus wakes up to someone shaking his shoulder. American guard, young guy, baby face, looks like he should be in high school. Not running a POW camp. Aufstehen, the guard says. His German is memorized. Robotic breakfast. 30 minutes. Klaus sits up slowly. His body aches less than yesterday. Turns out sleeping on a floor with a blanket beats sleeping in a bombed-out basement. Who knew? The gymnasium is already half empty. Other prisoners filing out toward the mess area. Klaus joins the line. Nobody talks much in the mornings. Takes energy to talk. Energy nobody really has yet. Breakfast is oatmeal, plain, gray, kind of lumpy. But it's hot, and there's enough of it. Klaus eats with the same slow patience. Stomach still adjusting to regular food. Next to him, Karl is practically inhaling his portion. Slow down, Klaus says. You'll make yourself sick. Karl doesn't listen. 10 minutes later, he's outside vomiting behind the building. I told you, the days in the processing center blur together. Wake up, eat, stand around, eat again, sleep. They're waiting for paperwork, for decisions. For someone somewhere to figure out what to do with 8 million men who used to be the enemy. On the third day, they start the interviews. Klaus gets called into a room with 2 American officers and a German translator. The translator is from Bavaria. You can hear it in his accent. Klaus wonders how he ended up working for the Americans. Captured earlier, defected, smart enough to switch sides before everything collapsed. The questions are straightforward. Name, rank, unit, where he served, what he did. Klaus answers honestly. He was infantry. Fought in France in '44, then got pushed back to Germany. No SS affiliations, no war crimes that he knows of. Just a regular soldier doing what soldiers do. Shooting at people who are shooting at him. Any special skills? The American officer asks through the translator. Klaus thinks about it. I worked in my father's bakery before the war. The officer writes something down. That single detail Klaus will learn later is what saves him from the worst assignments. Bakers are useful. Everyone needs bread. After the interview, Klaus is given a card with a number on it. His POW number. He's officially cataloged now. Part of the system. One of 8 million cards in one of 8 million files somewhere. Back in the gymnasium, he finds Franz sitting against the wall smoking. Where Franz got a cigarette is anyone's guess. Guy could probably find luxury goods in a graveyard. How'd yours go? Franz asks, fine, yours? Same. They asked if I'd ever been to Dachau. Klaus goes quiet. Everyone knows about the camps now. The Americans have been broadcasting information, showing photographs, making sure every German soldier understands what was done in their name, whether they knew about it or not. Had you? Klaus asks, never. But they ask everyone, looking for guards, I think, says pretending to be Wehrmacht. They sit in silence for a while. What do you even say? Klaus didn't know, not really. He'd heard rumors. Whispers about camps and deportations. But rumors aren't the same as knowing. And not knowing doesn't mean you're innocent. It just means you didn't ask questions you should have asked. A new group of prisoners arrives that afternoon. About 50 men. They look worse than Klaus's group did. Thinner, dirtier. One guy is missing part of his left hand, badly bandaged. Probably done in a field hospital with whatever supplies they could scavenge. Klaus watches them get processed. Same routine. Search, questions, medical check, food, space in the gymnasium. The American system is efficient, clinical. Everyone gets the same treatment. Nobody gets beaten, Nobody gets executed. They're prisoners, but they're prisoners with rights. Geneva Convention rights. That night, Klaus ends up talking to one of the new arrivals. Guy named Wolfgang. He's from Berlin. Got captured 3 days ago, trying to defend a bridge that didn't matter anymore. I heard they're shipping some of us to America, Wolfgang says. Across the ocean. To work on farms. Klaus hasn't heard this yet. America? Why? Labor. They need workers. Lost a bunch to the draft. So they're leasing German posts to farmers. That's allowed. Wolfgang shrugs. Who's going to stop them? We lost. The rumor spreads through the camp like wildfire. Asterisk America, actual America. The place with the cars and the movies and the buildings that aren't rubble. Some guys are terrified at the idea. An ocean away from home. No way to know what's happening to your family. But others see it as winning the lottery. Better than here, Carl says. He's still pale from vomiting yesterday, but getting better. Better than France. What's wrong with France? Klaus asks, you haven't heard? Carl lowers his voice, like he's sharing classified information. The French camps are brutal. One guy I talked to, his brother got sent to France right after capture. They're starving them. 900 calories a day. That's it. Klaus tries to imagine surviving on 900 calories. That's less than they were getting during the retreat. Less than what people in the ghettos got. The irony isn't lost on him. The Red Cross reported it. Carl continues. Almost 200,000 prisoners in French custody facing starvation. The Americans had to stop sending more. Franz joins their conversation, cigarette dangling from his lips. French want revenge. Can't blame them, really. We did occupy their country for 4 years. So what? They're going to kill us slowly through starvation? Some of them will try. The next day brings more rumors, this time about the Soviets. A prisoner arrives from further east, guy named Ernst. He'd been captured by the Soviets initially, then somehow ended up in American hands during some kind of prisoner exchange or mix-up. Nobody's quite clear on the details, but he's seen the Soviet camps. He knows what happens there that evening. Everyone crowds around Ernst wanting to know. Morbid curiosity, also self-preservation. Some of them might end up in Soviet hands eventually. Better to know what you're facing. It's not a camp, Ernst says. His voice flat. It's a work battalion. 3,000 to 5,000 men. They organize you like an army unit. Put you on construction crews rebuilding what we destroyed. That doesn't sound terrible, someone says. Ernst laughs, no humor in it. You're rebuilding in Siberia in winter with inadequate clothes. Inadequate food, inadequate everything. The Soviets can barely feed their own people. You think they're worried about feeding German prisoners? How bad? Klaus asks. 1 in 3 don't make it home. The gymnasium goes quiet. 1 in 3. Those are terrible odds. Russian roulette with 2 bullets instead of 1. The ones who are already sick when captured, Ernst continues. Malnourished from the retreat, they died in the first month. The Soviets would just release them rather than waste resources. Sent them wandering off to die somewhere else. Jesus, Franz mutters. It's not intentional, Ernst says. Not exactly. They're not executing people. They're just working you in conditions where a third of you are going to die. Could be disease, could be cold, could be starvation, could be an accident at the work site. Doesn't really matter how. You're still dead. Klaus thinks about those tank tracks on that April morning. American tanks, not Soviet. That random chance, that coin flip. That's the difference between possibly seeing home again and probably dying in Siberia. Luck, that's all it was. Dumb luck. I met some guys who'd been leased to the French, Ernst adds, for reconstruction work, building roads, working in quarries. Some were clearing minefields. Clearing minefields? Carl sounds horrified. That's a death sentence. 2,000 per month, Ernst says. Killed or maimed, that's the number I heard. They're making Poes walk through fields we mind as punishment, as justice, as whatever helps them sleep at night. The math is simple and terrible. 2,000 men per month, 24,000 per year. And for what? Because the French want their roads rebuilt, and they figure German hands should do it, even if some of those hands get blown off in the process. Klaus feels sick. He's lucky. He knows he's lucky. He got captured by Americans who mostly follow the rules, who give you food and blankets and medical attention, who treat you like a prisoner of war instead of a thing to be used up and discarded. But luck shouldn't be the deciding factor. There are supposed to be rules. Geneva Convention, international law, protection for prisoners. Except international law is just words on paper when you're standing in a French minefield or freezing in a Soviet work camp. The British aren't bad, Wolfgang offers, trying to lighten the mood. I heard they house prisoners in manor houses sometimes, actual fancy estates. They pay you 2 shillings a day if you work. 2 shillings? Franz perks up. That's real money. Yeah. British are fair about it. Americans too, mostly. It's just the French and Soviets who are. Well, vengeful, Ernst finishes. The word you're looking for is vengeful, and they've earned it. We destroyed their countries, killed their people. You can't expect them to just forgive and forget. Nobody argues with that. What's the argument? Asterisk, we were just following orders. We didn't personally do anything wrong. Klaus and his companions are guilty by association. They wore the uniform. They fought the war. They're complicit. Even if they never pulled a trigger on a civilian. Even if they didn't know about the camps. Not knowing doesn't make you innocent. It just makes you willfully blind. That night, Klaus can't sleep. He keeps thinking about the numbers. 11 million prisoners. 8 million in Western hands. 3 million in Soviet hands. 1 in 3 of those 3 million won't make it home. That's 1 million dead men. 1 million graves in Siberia. 1 million families will wait for letters that never come. And what about the ones in French camps? The ones starving on 900 calories? The ones clearing minefields? How many of them make it home? Klaus got lucky. That's the truth of it. He survived the war. He surrendered to Americans. He's sleeping on a floor in a gymnasium with regular meals and medical care and a reasonable expectation of survival. So many others won't be that lucky. The next morning brings an announcement. A list of names, men being transferred, some to work camps in Germany, others to farms in France for reconstruction, a handful to Britain, and yes, some to America. Klaus's name is on the America list. He's going to Georgia to work on a farm for a year, maybe 2, until the politicians figure out peace terms and repatriation schedules. He'll labor in fields under the southern sun. He'll watch American movies on weekends. He'll eat regular meals. He'll survive. It's not home. But it's not Siberia either. Karl's name is on the France list. The kid looks terrified. Hey, Klaus says, gripping his shoulder. You'll be okay. Work hard. Keep your head down. Don't volunteer for anything. Especially don't volunteer for mine clearing. I don't want to go to France. I know. But you'll survive it. You survived the war. You'll survive this, Karl nods. But doesn't look convinced. Franz is staying in Germany. Work detail, rebuilding roads. He seems okay with it. At least I'll be close to home, he says. Maybe I can slip away eventually. Find my family. Hauptmann Weber. He's still just sitting there staring at nothing. They've assigned him to a work camp somewhere. Klaus doubts he'll make it. The man's already gone. His body just hasn't figured it out yet. They ship Klaus out 3 days later. Truck to a train, train to a port, port to a ship. The whole journey is surreal. He's crossing the Atlantic, going to America. the country he spent 2 years fighting against. Now he's going to work their farms and eat their food and watch their movies. History is weird. On the ship, squeezed into a hold with 300 other prisoners, Klaus thinks about the men going east, the ones in Soviet custody, the ones who drew the short straw, the ones who will spend the next year or 5 or 10 working in frozen labor camps, rebuilding a country they tried to destroy. 1 in 3 won't make it. Klaus closes his eyes and tries not to think about it, but he does think about it. All the way across the Atlantic, all the way to Georgia, all through the long year of labor in American fields. He thinks about how your entire fate came down to one moment, one decision, one arbitrary fact about who reached your position first, Americans or Soviets, life or death. Nothing you did mattered. Nothing you believed in mattered. Just luck, just timing, just random chance that you'd spend your captivity in relative safety. While others froze and starved and died thousands of miles from home, Klaus survives. He's one of the lucky ones. He'll make it home eventually. He'll see Hamburg again. He'll find out his family survived. He'll rebuild a life in a broken country. But he'll never forget that it came down to luck. Pure, dumb, random luck and nothing else. Georgia in June is hot. Not the dry heat Klaus remembers from France in '44. This is wet heat, sticky heat, the kind that makes your uniform cling to your skin and turns breathing into work. Klaus is standing in a cotton field at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he's already sweating. The farm belongs to a guy named Mr. Patterson, older man, maybe 60. Lost his 2 sons to the war, one in the Pacific, one in France. He doesn't talk about it much, just puts Klaus and 3 other German prisoners to work and pays them 50 cents a day. 50 cents, actual American money. Klaus hasn't earned real wages in 3 years. The work is brutal in its own way. Not dangerous like combat. Not terrifying like waiting for artillery. Just exhausting, repetitive. Your back screams, your hands blister. The sun beats down like it's personally angry at you. But at the end of the day, there's food. A cot in a barn that's cooler than outside. Water whenever you want it. Klaus is picking cotton next to a black sharecropper named James. Guy's probably 40, but the sun and work have aged him. They don't talk much, language barrier also. The weird tension of working side by side with someone who's technically free, but treated worse than the German hose. The Americans feed Klaus 3 meals a day. Give him medical attention when he cuts his hand on a fence. Let him watch movies in town on Saturday nights. James lives in a shack with no electricity. Gets paid less than the prisoners. Can't eat in the same restaurants or use the same bathrooms as white folks. Klaus notices this, doesn't talk about it. What would he even say? Asterisk, your country is weird. Your priorities are backwards. He's a prisoner from a country that tried to exterminate entire populations. He's got no room to judge anyone's moral failures. But it's strange, that's all. Strange to be treated better than free men, just because of skin color. At night in the barn, Klaus writes letters home, or tries to. The mail system is inconsistent. He sent 4 letters to Hamburg since arriving in America. Gotten 1 response, his mother's handwriting, 3 pages about nothing and everything. The apartment survived the bombing. His father's bakery is gone. Anna is engaged to a British soldier, which would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. But now it's just reality. Everyone's adjusting to the new world. The one where Germany lost and doesn't exist as a country anymore. Just zones, American zone, British zone, French zone, Soviet zone. Like someone took scissors to a map and cut the country into pieces. Klaus gets letters from other prisoners, too. Unofficial mail system. Guys who work on different farms passing information through networks. News from home, updates about who made it, who didn't, he gets a letter from Franz. Still in Germany, working on road construction near Munich. The work is hard but fair. He's earning occupation marks. Saving up, hoping to find his family soon. The letter is optimistic. Franz always was a glass half full kind of guy. Then Klaus gets a letter from someone he doesn't know. Friend of Karl's, apparently. Karl is dead. Died clearing a minefield in France. Stepped on a mine that didn't explode immediately. Took him 3 hours to die, while medics tried to figure out what to do. He was 19. Klaus reads the letter twice. Then he folds it carefully and puts it in his footlocker with the others. Karl was a kid, cried in that basement back in April. Threw up after eating too fast. Got sent to France because his name ended up on the wrong list. Died 3 months later because someone needed those fields cleared and German prisoners were expendable. 2,000 per month. That's what Ernst had said. 2,000 killed or maimed every month clearing mines that German soldiers planted in the first place. The math is simple and terrible. And Klaus tries not to think about it. He goes back to picking cotton. Back to the heat and the work and the routine that keeps him alive. Saturday night comes, and the American guards take Klaus and the other prisoners into town. Small place called Dalton. Population maybe 3,000. They watch a movie at the theater. Some Western with John Wayne. Klaus doesn't catch all the dialogue, but he gets the general idea. Good guys versus bad guys. Good guys win, roll credits. After the movie, they get ice cream, actual ice cream. Klaus hasn't had ice cream since before the war. It's vanilla, simple, perfect. He eats it slowly, savoring every bite. An American kid, maybe 7 years old, stares at Klaus and the other prisoners in their uniforms. The kid's mother pulls him away quickly, whispers something Klaus can't hear. He wonders what she's telling the kid. Asterisk, those are the bad guys. Those are the Germans. Those are the men who tried to kill your uncle in France. Asterisk, all of it is true. None of it captures the whole truth. Back at the farm, Klaus lies on his cot and thinks about the guys in Soviet camps. No movies for them, no ice cream. Just frozen labor sites and starvation rations and guards who just as soon let you die as look at you. Ernst had described it in detail. The camps in the Ural Mountains, Siberia. Places where winter drops to 40 below and you're expected to work. Construction in inadequate clothing with inadequate food, where a third of the prisoners don't make it home. Not because the Soviets are executing them, but because they're working them in conditions where dying is just statistically likely. Klaus met a guy last month, transfer from another farm. Guy named Otto, who'd been captured by Soviets initially, then somehow ended up in American custody through prisoner exchanges. Otto had spent 4 months in a Soviet labor battalion before the transfer. He'd lost 30 pounds, had frostbite scars on 3 fingers. Talked in his sleep about frozen corpses being stacked like firewood. The Soviets aren't evil, Otto had said. They're just practical. They lost 20 million people. Their country is destroyed. They need workers to rebuild. We destroyed it, so we rebuild it. Makes sense to them. Does it make sense to you? Klaus had asked. Otto had shrugged. I'm alive. That's more than I can say for a lot of guys I knew. The survival rate haunted Klaus. 1 in 3, 33% mortality. If you put 3 German soldiers in a Soviet labor camp, one of them is coming home in a box, if he comes home at all. Some just disappear into mass graves in Siberia. Klaus does the math sometimes. 3 million German prisoners in Soviet custody. 1 million dead. 1 million men who survived the war only to die, building railroads in frozen wastelands thousands of miles from home. And here's Klaus picking cotton in Georgia, eating ice cream on Saturday nights, sleeping on a cot in a barn that's practically luxury compared to anything he had during the war. Luck. That's all it was. A letter arrives from someone Klaus knew in training. Guy named Heinrich. He's in a French camp. The letter is bleak, short sentences, no emotion, just facts. The camp gives them 900 calories a day. That's less than Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto got. Heinrich doesn't say that directly. He doesn't have to. Everyone knows the comparison. Everyone understands the irony. 900 calories. You can't survive on that, not while working. Your body cannibalizes itself, burns through fat first, then muscle. You get weak, you get sick, you die. The camp Heinrich is in loses 12 men per day to starvation and disease. The Americans had to stop sending prisoners to France. The Red Cross stepped in. 200,000 German prisoners facing imminent starvation. The French camps were basically death camps. Not intentionally, not with gas chambers and systematic murder, just through neglect and revenge. And the simple fact that France was starving too, and feeding German prisoners wasn't a priority. Klaus writes back to Heinrich, but he doesn't know what to say. Hang in there, stay strong, it all sounds hollow. Heinrich is starving to death in France, and Klaus is eating vanilla ice cream in Georgia. What comfort can he possibly offer? The work continues. Cotton gives way to corn. Summer heat becomes fall warmth. Klaus settles into the rhythm. Wake up, work, eat, sleep. Weekend movies, letters home, waiting for the politicians to figure out peace terms and repatriation. Mrs. Patterson starts teaching Klaus English. Real English, not just the work-related commands he's picked up. She's nice about it, patient, treats him like a person instead of a prisoner. Klaus wonders if she's doing this for herself. Keeping busy, her sons are dead. And teaching German prisoners English maybe helps fill that void. He learns quickly. Always been good with languages. By October, he can hold basic conversations. By December, he's reading American newspapers. The war crimes trials are starting. Nuremberg, the big names. Gring, Ribbentrop, Keitel, the ones who planned and executed everything. Klaus reads about the trials with a mix of fascination and dread. They're laying it all out. The camps, the death tolls, the systematic murder of millions, all of it documented. Photographed, proven, he didn't know. That's what he tells himself. He was just infantry, just following orders, just trying to survive. But not knowing feels like an excuse. A cowardly one. He wore the uniform. He fought the war. He's complicit. The other prisoners on the farm don't talk about it much. What is there to say? Asterisk, we lost. We're guilty. Our country committed atrocities. Now we pick cotton in Georgia and wait to go home. Asterisk, a letter arrives from Ernst. He's still in Germany, working in a sawmill near Stuttgart. The letter describes denazification tribunals. Every German soldier has to appear before one. They categorize you. Major offender, offender, lesser offender, follower, or exonerated. Most regular soldiers get categorized as lesser offenders. 3 years probation. Can't hold public office. Can't run your own business. It's a slap on the wrist compared to what's happening to SS members and high-ranking officers. Klaus will face one of these tribunals when he gets home. Eventually, whenever that is. The Americans are starting to release some prisoners. Early releases for guys who can prove family hardship or who have skills Germany needs for rebuilding. Klaus isn't on any release lists yet. His father's bakery is destroyed. His mother and sister are alive. But they're managing. No hardship case. No special skills that matter. So he picks cotton, learns English, watches John Wayne movies, waits, Christmas comes, Mrs. Patterson invites Klaus and the other prisoners to Christmas dinner in the house. Actual house, not the barn. They sit at a table with real plates and eat turkey and stuffing and cranberry sauce. There's a tree with lights, presents underneath, though none for the prisoners. That would be weird. Mr. Patterson says grace. thanks God for the food, the family, the peace. Mentions his sons briefly, chokes up, finishes the prayer. They eat in relative silence. It's kind but uncomfortable. Klaus is eating Christmas dinner with a family whose sons died fighting against his country. The absurdity isn't lost on anyone. After dinner, Mrs. Patterson gives each prisoner a package. Chocolate, cigarettes, new socks, small things. Kindness that Klaus doesn't quite know how to accept. "Merry Christmas," she says. Klaus thanks her in English. His accent is thick but comprehensible. That night, back in the barn, one of the other prisoners starts crying. Quiet crying, the kind you try to hide. Klaus doesn't ask why. He knows why. It's Christmas, and they're thousands of miles from home, and their country is occupied rubble. And some of them have families who might be dead. And all of them are prisoners who don't know when they're going home. Klaus stares at the barn ceiling and thinks about Karl, about Heinrich starving in France, about Otto's frostbite scars, about the million men dying in Soviet labor camps, about everyone who drew the wrong card, ended up in the wrong place, got assigned the wrong fate. He's alive, he's fed, he's safe, and he feels guilty about all of it. New Year comes, 1946. First year of peace, sort of the war in Europe, ended last May. But Japan didn't surrender until August. Now it's really over, really finished. No more fighting anywhere, just consequences. Just tribunals and reconstruction and millions of people trying to figure out how to live in the world that the war created. Klaus gets a letter in January. Franz is getting married. Found a girl in Munich. Mechanic's daughter. Wedding is in March. Klaus obviously can't attend. He's in Georgia, but Franz wanted him to know. Wanted to share something good in a time when good news is rare. Klaus is happy for him. Franz deserves happiness. Everyone does, even prisoners, even the guilty, even the complicit. February brings news of repatriation schedules. The Americans and British have agreed to start sending prisoners home slowly, bureaucratically, based on various criteria that nobody fully understands. But it's happening. Men are going home. Klaus isn't on the early lists. He's young, healthy, no family emergency. He'll wait, but Heinrich dies. Letter from another prisoner in the French camp. Heinrich starved to death in February, one of thousands who didn't make it out of French custody. The camps have improved since the Red Cross intervention. More food, better conditions, but for Heinrich, the intervention came too late. Klaus folds that letter carefully and puts it with Karl's. 2 men he knew, 2 men who didn't make it home, 2 men whose deaths were preventable, unnecessary, the result of revenge and neglect and the basic cruelty of humans toward other humans. The cotton grows again, spring planting, Klaus is back in the fields. The heat builds, the routine continues. He's become good at this work. Fast picker, efficient, Mr. Patterson has told him he could have a job here permanently if he wanted, after repatriation, after going home. If he wanted to come back, Klaus doesn't know what he wants. Home doesn't exist anymore, not the way he remembers it. Hamburg is rubble, the country is occupied. Everything is different, but it's still home, still where his family is, still where he belongs. He'll go back eventually when they let him, and he'll face the tribunal and accept whatever judgment they give and try to build something in the ruins. But part of him will always be in this barn, in this field, picking cotton under the Georgia sun, while other men froze and starved and died in camps thousands of miles away. Part of him will always wonder why he got lucky, and they didn't. The repatriation order comes in August 1946, 16 months after surrender. Klaus's name is finally on a list. He's going home. The journey back is slower than the journey over. Different ship, more crowded, hundreds of prisoners packed into holds. all heading back to a Germany that doesn't quite exist anymore. Not as a country, just as zones occupied by different armies. Klaus stands on deck watching America disappear behind him. Weird feeling. He spent over a year there. Picked their cotton. Watched their movies. Learned their language. Now he's leaving, and he's not sure how he feels about it. Grateful. Definitely. Alive because of American custody. Relieved, yes. Going home, whatever that means now, guilty. Always. The guilt lives in his chest like a permanent weight. The Atlantic crossing takes 9 days. Men gamble with cigarettes, trade stories, speculate about what they'll find at home. Most are optimistic in that desperate way people get when they're trying not to think about the alternative. Klaus keeps to himself mostly, reads a book Mrs. Patterson gave him, The Grapes of Wrath. His English is good enough now to mostly understand it. Story about Depression-era farmers, poverty and struggle, and people trying to survive. Feels appropriate somehow. A land in Bremen, or what's left of it. The port is barely functional. Half the docks are destroyed. Buildings are gutted shells. There's rubble everywhere. Mountains of it. Brick and concrete and twisted metal. The smell is strange. Old smoke, decay. Something Klaus can't quite identify. This is Germany. This is home. They're processed through a British checkpoint. Papers verified, medical inspection, delousing, which is humiliating, but probably necessary after 9 days packed in a ship hold. Then they're given temporary identification cards and released into the occupation zone. Just like that, after 16 months as a prisoner. Klaus is free, sort of free to wander a destroyed country under military occupation, where he doesn't have a job or money, or any clear path forward. The train to Hamburg takes 12 hours. Should take 5, but the rail system is wrecked. Trains run on whatever schedule they can manage. You wait. You squeeze into packed cars with other displaced people. Refugees, former prisoners, people looking for family members who might be dead. Klaus shares a train compartment with an old woman carrying 2 chickens in a basket. She doesn't explain the chickens. He doesn't ask. Everyone's doing what they can to survive. Hamburg looks worse than Bremen. The bombing was thorough. Block after block of destroyed buildings. Some areas are just empty space where neighborhoods used to be. Klaus walks through streets he knew as a kid and can't recognize them. The landmarks are gone. The bakery on the corner, gone. The school, rubble. The park, now it's a temporary graveyard. He finds his family's apartment through sheer luck and muscle memory. The building is still standing, damaged, but standing. The front entrance is propped up with timber. Half the windows are blown out, covered with boards and tar paper. Klaus climbs to the 3rd floor. His hands are shaking. He knocks, waits, knocks again. The door opens and his mother is standing there. She's aged 10 years in the 3 he's been gone. Gray hair, deep lines around her eyes. Thin in a way that speaks to chronic hunger rather than illness. She stares at him for 3 full seconds. Then she makes a sound that's half sob, half laugh, and pulls him inside. Anna is there too, bigger than he remembers. Not a kid anymore. She's 20 now, wearing a British Army jacket that's way too big for her. Her fiancé is probably the British soldier she's engaged to. They don't have much. The apartment is cold. There's no electricity most days. Water is rationed, food is scarce. But they're alive. They made it through. Klaus's father didn't. Heart attack in February 1945, right before the war ended. The bakery had been destroyed months earlier. The stress, the hunger, the bombing, the loss of everything he'd built. It was too much. He died in this apartment. They buried him in a temporary cemetery that used to be a park. Klaus absorbs this information quietly. His father is dead. He wasn't there. He was in Georgia, eating ice cream while his father died in a cold apartment in a dying city. He knew you're alive, his mother says. We got your letters, not all of them, but some. He knew. It doesn't make Klaus feel better. Nothing really makes him feel better. That night, lying on a makeshift bed in what used to be his room, Klaus stares at the ceiling and listens to Hamburg. The city sounds different, quieter, no traffic. Just wind through broken buildings and the occasional sound of someone coughing in another apartment. This is victory, this is peace. The next morning, Klaus walks through Hamburg looking for work. Any work. The city is slowly rebuilding, but opportunities are scarce. Too many men looking for too few jobs. And nobody really trusts former soldiers. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He spends 2 weeks searching. Nothing. He's running out of the American money he saved. His mother and sister are sharing their rations with him, but rations are tight. He's another mouth to feed in a household that was barely managing before he arrived. Then the letter arrives. Official British Occupation Authority. Klaus is ordered to report for denazification proceedings. His tribunal date is October 4th. Everyone has to go through this. Every former soldier, every party member, every German who was old enough to have participated in the war. The Allies want to purge the country of everyone who supported the regime, root out the true believers, separate the committed party members from the regular people who just went along. In theory, it makes sense. In practice, it's a mess. Klaus reports to a building that used to be a courthouse, still is technically. But now it's run by British officers and German administrators, trying to process thousands of cases with inadequate resources and unclear guidelines. The waiting room is packed, former soldiers in worn civilian clothes, a few women. Everyone looks tired, nervous, resentful. Nobody wants to be here. But you don't have a choice. You go or you get arrested. Klaus waits 3 hours before his name is called. The tribunal room is small. 3 people behind a table, 2 German men and 1 British officer. They have a file in front of them. Klaus's file, collected from somewhere. American POW records probably. Klaus Zimmermann? Yes. Date of birth, April 16th, 1923? Yes. You served in the Wehrmacht from October 1943 until capture in April 1945? Yes. They go through his entire service record. Where he trained, where he deployed, what unit, what actions he saw. Klaus answers honestly. There's no point lying. They have the records. They know. Were you a member of the National Socialist Party? The British officer asks. No. Hitler Youth? Yes, everyone was. This is true. If you were a kid in the 30s, you were in Hitler Youth. It wasn't optional. Not really. Did you participate in any war crimes? Massacres? Executions? Deportations? No. Were you aware of the concentration camps? Klaus hesitates. This is the question everyone struggles with. What counts is knowing. Rumors, whispers, things you heard but didn't ask about. I heard rumors, he says finally. But I didn't know details. I was infantry. We fought on the front lines. The British officer writes something down. The German administrators consult each other in whispers. This process repeats itself hundreds of times a day, thousands of times across Germany. Everyone trying to figure out who was really guilty and who was just swept along. And here's the problem. Almost everyone was just swept along. The true believers were a minority. The rest were just Germans trying to survive. But survival doesn't equal innocence. After 20 minutes of questions, they dismiss Klaus. He'll receive their judgment by mail. Should take 6 to 8 weeks. Can I work while I wait? Klaus asks. Technically, yes, one of the German administrators says. But most employers won't hire anyone pending denazification. Too risky. If you get classified as an offender, they have to fire you. Easier to just wait and hire people who've been cleared. So Klaus waits. Lives off his mother's rations. Helps where he can. Clears rubble from streets. Stands in lines for bread. Tries to piece together a life in a city that's barely a city anymore. The judgment arrives in November. Lesser offender? Exactly what Klaus expected. It's the default category for regular Wehrmacht soldiers. You weren't SS. You weren't high-ranking. You weren't a party official, so you're a lesser offender. 3 years probation. During this time, Klaus cannot hold public office, cannot run his own business, cannot vote. He can work, but only in approved capacities, manual labor mostly. There's a whole list of restrictions. It's punishment, but mild punishment. A slap on the wrist compared to what the real monsters got. Compared to what Klaus maybe deserves, Franz gets the same judgment. Lesser offender, 3 years probation. He writes about it in a letter. He's frustrated but resigned. Could be worse, he writes. Asterisk, could be like the guys they actually tried at Nuremberg. Asterisk, the Nuremberg trials are everywhere. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, everyone following the proceedings. Gring, Keitel, Ribbentrop, the architects, the executives, the ones who planned and coordinated everything. Klaus reads about it obsessively. He needs to understand what he was part of, what his country did, what his uniform represented. The evidence is overwhelming. Mountains of documents, photographs, testimony from survivors, the camps, the death tolls, the systematic murder of millions, Jews, Roma, disabled people, political prisoners, Soviet posts. The numbers are so big they stop meaning. 6 million Jews, the number appears in every article. 6 million, Klaus tries to conceptualize it. Can't. It's too big, too horrible. Too far beyond human comprehension. He was part of this, maybe not directly. Maybe he never pulled a trigger on a civilian. Maybe he was just infantry doing infantry things. But he wore the uniform. He fought the war. He made it possible. The trials conclude in October 1946, 12 death sentences. 7 prison terms, 3 acquittals. Gring takes poison the night before his execution. The others hang, justice, after a fashion. But there are millions of cases still pending. Millions of former soldiers and party members and administrators and police and everyone else who made the machine run. The tribunal system is buckling under the weight. By 1947, they start making exemptions. Disabled veterans get automatic lesser offender status. People born after 1919 get expedited clearance. Anyone who can prove they were impoverished during the war gets leniency. The system needs to process people faster. So they start cutting corners. Klaus sees it happening. Guys he knows were enthusiastic party members getting lesser offender status because they lost a leg or because their birthday fell on the right side of an arbitrary line. The tribunals aren't finding truth. They're just processing paperwork. In 1948, Klaus's probation technically ends. 3 years up, he gets a letter confirming his status. Lesser offender probation complete. He can vote now, can run a business if he wants, can hold public office, though who'd want to. He's free, cleared, exonerated, sort of. The denazification program officially ends in the early 50s. Too expensive, too complicated, too many people to process. And honestly, Germany needs to move forward. The Western Allies need Germany as a buffer against the Soviets. Can't have half the population still on probation, so they stop, draw a line. Everyone who hasn't been processed yet gets automatic clearance. Thousands of actual party members. True believers. People who did horrible things. They slip through because the system broke down. It bothers Klaus, the arbitrariness of it all. He got lesser offender because he was captured in April 1945. If he'd been captured in 1944, maybe classified differently. If he'd served in a different unit, different judgment, if he'd been born in 1920 instead of 1923, different process entirely. Nothing about it was fair. Nothing about it was just. It was bureaucracy trying to assign moral categories to millions of people, and failing because morality doesn't scale. Klaus gets a job at a reconstruction site. Hard labor, clearing rubble, rebuilding roads. It's not glamorous, but it pays. He saves money slowly. Hamburg is recovering slowly. Germany is recovering slowly, but the questions never go away. The guilt never fully fades. Klaus carries it around like a second skeleton. Invisible weight that never quite lifts. He's one of the lucky ones. He knows this. He survived the war, survived captivity, came home, got categorized as lesser offender, served his probation, got a job, his family survived. So many others didn't get lucky. Karl died in a French minefield. Heinrich starved. Otto has frostbite scars and nightmares. 1 million men died in Soviet camps. Millions more died in the war, millions more in the camps. Klaus is alive and free and working. And that should be enough. But it's not. Nothing feels like enough. Nothing feels like it balances out at night. He lies in his rebuilt bedroom in his partially repaired apartment and thinks about all of it. The war, the camps, the tribunals, the arbitrary nature of judgment, the randomness of survival. He thinks about the Allied soldiers who treated him decently, the American farm family who fed him ice cream, the British officer who stamped his papers without malice, the system that, despite its flaws, tried to find some measure of justice. And he thinks about home, this broken city, this occupied country, this place that has to somehow build a future while carrying the weight of its past. Klaus doesn't have answers. Nobody does. But he gets up every morning and goes to work and tries to build something in the ruins. It's all anyone can do. By 1949, something shifts in Germany. Klaus notices it gradually. Small things at first. The way people talk about the war, the stories they tell themselves. At the reconstruction site where Klaus works, guys start saying things, casual comments during lunch breaks. Asterisk, we were just soldiers. The real crimes were the SS. The Wehrmacht fought honorably. We had nothing to do with the camps. Klaus listens, doesn't argue. But he remembers what the prosecutors said at Nuremberg. The Wehrmacht and SS worked together. The army would take a town. The SS would clear it. Two parts of the same machine. But people don't want to hear that. They want clean lines, good Germans and bad Germans, honorable soldiers and criminal party members. It's easier that way. Simpler, less guilt to carry. Franz visits in the spring. He's doing well. Married, baby on the way, working as a mechanic in Munich. They grab drinks at a bar that's been rebuilt from rubble. You hear about the clemency board? Franz asks. Klaus hasn't. What clemency board? American Advisory Board, reviewing war criminal cases, looking for reasons to reduce sentences or grant pardons. Why would they do that? Franz shrugs. Politics, they need Germany as an ally against the Soviets. Can't have half the country's leadership still in prison. Bad for business. Klaus thinks about the men who hanged at Nuremberg, the ones who planned everything. Those cases were clear, simple, they gave orders. People died, justice was served, but below them were thousands of other cases. Officers who executed orders, administrators who processed paperwork, guards who ran the camps, soldiers who committed massacres. Where do you draw the line? How far down does responsibility go? They're saying the Wehrmacht was clean, Franz continues. That regular soldiers didn't commit crimes. Only the SS. That's not true. I know it's not true. You know it's not true, but it's what people want to believe. And if the Americans are willing to believe it too, everyone wins, we get to move on. They get an ally. Klaus drinks his beer. It tastes like compromise. The Clemency Board reviews 105 cases in the summer of 1950. Klaus reads about it in the newspaper. Families of convicted war criminals presenting evidence, medical histories, character witnesses, claims of coercion, claims that orders were falsified, claims that the prosecution was biased. 84 cases get reduced sentences or pardons, 84 out of 105. The board is looking for reasons to be lenient, and they're finding them, or creating them, or just deciding that justice is less important than political expedience. Klaus meets a guy at work named Werner, older man, maybe 50. Turns out Werner's brother was convicted at a minor tribunal. Not Nuremberg, one of the smaller trials for concentration camp guards. Werner's brother got 20 years. They're reviewing his case, Werner says. Pride in his voice. We got letters from neighbors, from his old commanding officer, saying he was just following orders, that he didn't have a choice. Did he? Klaus asks, did he what? Have a choice. Werner looks at him like he's crazy. He was a soldier. Soldiers follow orders. That's how armies work. Klaus doesn't push it, but he thinks about his own tribunal. The questions they asked. Asterisk, were you following orders? Yes. Did you commit crimes? No. Could you have refused? That question never came up, because if you ask that question, you open a door nobody wants opened. If soldiers could refuse orders, then they're responsible for following them. And if they're responsible, then just following orders stops being a defense. Easier not to ask. The Federal Republic of Germany is officially founded in May 1949. New country, new government. First Chancellor is Konrad Adenauer. Old political hand, conservative, pragmatic. Smart enough to know Germany needs to move forward. One of his first moves, announcing plans for a general amnesty for war criminals. Klaus reads about it, feels something turn in his stomach. Amnesty for war criminals, because Germany needs unity. Because dwelling on the past is divisive. Because everyone wants to just move on. Franz calls it practical. We can't rebuild with half the country in prison or on trial. We need engineers, administrators, doctors. Some of those guys have experience we need. Some of those guys ran death camps. Not all of them. Some were just regular officers. Regular administrators. Where's the line, Franz? Franz doesn't have an answer. Nobody does. The clean Wehrmacht myth spreads like a virus. Klaus hears it everywhere. Bars, work sites, family gatherings. Asterisk, the Wehrmacht was honorable. The Wehrmacht fought cleanly. The Wehrmacht was separate from the party's crimes. It's comforting. Klaus understands the appeal. You can honor your dead without endorsing what they died for. You can mourn your father or brother or husband without accepting that they were part of atrocities. But it's also a lie. Klaus was there. He wore the uniform. He saw how things worked. The Wehrmacht wasn't some separate entity. They coordinated with the SS. They provided support. They executed civilians in reprisal attacks. They participated in the machine. Not all soldiers did horrible things. Klaus didn't shoot civilians. Franz didn't run camps. Most regular infantry just fought other soldiers and tried not to die. But the institution, the Wehrmacht as an organization, that's different. The Wehrmacht made the atrocities possible, provided the manpower, the logistics, the control of territory. You can't separate the clean parts from the dirty parts. They were all part of the same thing, but people want to separate them, need to. Because if you can't draw that line, then almost everyone is complicit, and that's too much guilt for a country to carry while trying to rebuild. Klaus's sister Anna marries her British soldier in 1950. Klaus attends the wedding. It's small, simple. Anna is radiant in a borrowed dress. Her husband, Robert, is nervous and sincere. He's from Manchester, works in administration for the occupation forces. At the reception, Robert's parents are there, visiting from England. They're polite, but distant with Klaus. He gets it. Their son is marrying a German girl, the enemy, the people who bombed their cities, who killed their friends and neighbors. Robert's father corners Klaus at one point. You served? He asks, yes. Eastern or Western Front? Western, mostly France. The old man nods, calculating, trying to figure out if Klaus might have killed someone he knew. The math of war and revenge and random chance. You were lucky, he says finally. Could have been worse, Klaus agrees. Could have been worse, could have been Eastern Front. Could have been Cess, could have been dead. Lucky. That word again. The amnesty movement gains momentum. Families of convicted war criminals form advocacy groups. They lobby, they write letters. They present new evidence. Sometimes the evidence is real. Often it's fabricated. Doesn't matter much. The clemency boards want reasons to be lenient. Klaus watches it happen with growing unease. He's not saying everyone convicted deserves their full sentence. Some probably don't. Justice is messy. Mistakes happen. But this isn't about justice. It's about politics. About Germany needing to move forward. About the Western Allies needing German cooperation against the Soviets. About everyone wanting to forget, except the people who can't forget. Werner's brother gets his sentence reduced to time served in 1951. Released free. Just like that. 5 years in prison for being a concentration camp guard. Then freedom, then back to normal life. Job, family, pretending it never happened. Justice, Werner says, beaming. Finally. Some justice. Klaus doesn't respond. What's there to say? The myth spreads through families first. Asterisk, your father wasn't a criminal. He was a soldier. He served honorably. He didn't know about the camps. He was just following orders. He did what he had to do. These stories get repeated until they become truth, or close enough to truth that it doesn't matter. Asterisk, your grandfather fought bravely. Your uncle died defending the homeland. Your father was a good man in a bad situation. Asterisk, all of it might be partially true. Good people can do terrible things. Following orders is real. Most soldiers were just regular guys trying to survive. But it's not the whole truth. And choosing to remember only the clean parts, that's deliberate. That's deciding comfort matters more than honesty. Klaus goes to a bar one night. Local place, quiet, he's drinking alone. Which he does more often lately. A guy next to him starts talking. Former officer, Wehrmacht, now works in city planning. The trials were a disgrace, the guy says. He's not talking to Klaus. Nobody asked him. He's just talking. Maybe drunk, maybe just angry. They convicted honorable men for doing their duty, the SS. Fine, they were criminals, but the Wehrmacht? We fought with honor. Klaus sips his beer, says nothing. I knew men who hung at Nuremberg, the guy continues. Good officers, family men, they gave orders because that was their job. And the Allies hung them for it. Klaus thinks about the evidence presented at Nuremberg. The documents, the photographs, the testimony. The systematic planning of genocide. That wasn't just following orders. That was designing orders to follow. But he doesn't say this. What's the point? The guy's made up his mind. Everyone has. My cousin was in the SS, the guy says. Got 10 years, complete nonsense. He was just a guard. Never hurt anyone personally. Just did his job. Klaus finishes his beer, pays, leaves, walks home through streets that are slowly being rebuilt brick by brick, block by block, trying to recreate something that looks like the old Germany. But it's not the old Germany. Can't be. Too much happened. Too many people died. Too many crimes committed. You can rebuild the buildings, but you can't rebuild the innocence by 1952. Most of the clemency reviews are complete. Thousands of reduced sentences, thousands of pardons. Men who were convicted of war crimes walking free. Some probably deserve leniency, some definitely don't. The line between justice and politics has blurred so much it's disappeared. Klaus sees Werner's brother at a beer garden one day. The former concentration camp guard. He's laughing, drinking, surrounded by friends, living his life. Probably tells himself he was just following orders. Probably believes it. Klaus doesn't approach him. Just watches from a distance. Wonders what the man dreams about at night. Wonders if he sees the faces of the people he guarded, the ones who died. Or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's compartmentalized it, locked it away, decided it wasn't his responsibility. Just orders, just a job, just survival. People are good at that, at making peace with their past, at reshaping memory until it's bearable. Franz and his wife visit in 1953. Their daughter is 2. Adorable kid, loud, curious. No idea what world she was born into. No memory of war, occupation, or tribunals. She's just a kid who likes ice cream and hates bedtime. She won't have to carry any of this, Franz says. Watching his daughter play. That's the point, right? We carry it so she doesn't have to. Klaus wants to agree. Wants to believe the next generation can start clean. But he's not sure it works that way. You can't just decide history stops mattering. It seeps through. It's passed down, even if you don't talk about it. Especially if you don't talk about it. The myth solidifies. The clean Wehrmacht, the honorable soldier. The idea that regular military service was separate from the regime's crimes. It becomes accepted truth, not just in Germany, in America too, in Britain. Everyone needs Germany as an ally. Can't have an ally that's guilty of everything. So they accept the myth, endorse it, help spread it. Because politics matters more than history. Present needs matter more than past crimes. Klaus understands it. Doesn't agree with it, but understands it. Germany needs to move forward. The world needs Germany to move forward. Can't do that while drowning in guilt. Can't rebuild while half the country is on trial. So they draw a line. Hitler and his inner circle. Guilty, the SS, guilty. Everyone else, just following orders, just doing their jobs. Just caught up in circumstances beyond their control. It's a clean story, simple, comforting, also a lie. But a lie that lets people sleep at night. A lie that lets families honor their dead. A lie that lets a country function. Klaus doesn't have the energy to fight it anymore. He's tired, everyone's tired. You can only carry guilt for so long before it crushes you. Eventually, you have to set it down, even if setting it down means lying to yourself. He goes to work, comes home, lives his life. The reconstruction continues. Hamburg looks more like a real city every year. Buildings go up, roads get paved, commerce returns, life goes on. The past gets buried under new concrete, layer by layer, year by year, until you can almost forget it was ever there. Almost, Klaus never fully forgets. The weight is still there, lighter maybe, but permanent. He carries it to work, carries it home, carries it to bed every night. Some weights you carry forever, even when everyone else has decided to set theirs down, even when the world has moved on. The letter arrives in October 1955, official government seal. Klaus opens it at the kitchen table while his mother makes coffee from grounds they've already used twice. The Federal Republic of Germany is forming a new military. The Bundeswehr. They're looking for experienced soldiers. Former Wehrmacht personnel with clean records. Klaus qualifies. He reads the letter 3 times. They want him back in uniform. 10 years after the war ended. 10 years after he surrendered in that ruined farmhouse. They want him to be a soldier again. The irony tastes like metal. You going to do it? His mother asks. Klaus doesn't know. Part of him swore he'd never wear a uniform again, never follow orders, never be part of a military machine. He'd done his time, served his sentence, both literally and figuratively. But the pay is good, better than construction work. And Germany needs defending. The Soviets are right there. Berlin is split. The Cold War is heating up. The Western Allies need Germany armed and ready. Strange how things change. 10 years ago, the Allies were conquering Germany. Now they're rebuilding it as a buffer state. Politics is funny that way. Klaus accepts, signs the papers, reports for training in November. The training facility is near Munich. Modern buildings, good equipment, everything clean and organized. It's not the Wehrmacht. Different uniforms, different flag, different purpose, at least officially. But the faces are familiar. Klaus recognizes guys from the war. Not personally, just the type. Former soldiers in their 30s and 40s. Men who know how to fight because they already did. Men who survived, and now they're being asked to serve again. The instructors are former Wehrmacht officers. Same guys who trained Klaus the first time. They use the same tactics, same drills. Sometimes the same language. Asterisk, move faster. Keep your head down. That's not how we do things, asterisk, we. As if the Wehrmacht and Bundeswehr are continuous. As if nothing really changed except the name on the uniform. Klaus gets issued a rifle, American-made M1 Garand. Same weapon American soldiers used to shoot at him in France. Now he's carrying it. Defending West Germany against potential Soviet invasion. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Apparently, at night in the barracks, the guys talk. Same conversation soldiers always have. Complaints about officers, jokes about food, speculation about deployment. But sometimes the talk turns to the war. Carefully. Nobody wants to say the wrong thing. Get reported, lose their position. But the memories are there. Shared experience, shared trauma. I was at Kursk, one guy says, former panzer commander. Worst 3 days of my life, others nod. They've all got stories, places they'd rather forget, things they wish they could unsee. Klaus mostly listens. His war was on the Western Front. Easier than the East, less brutal, though brutal enough. A younger soldier, maybe 22, asks what it was like. He wasn't born when the war started, missed the whole thing. Now he's training to fight Soviets without ever having fought anyone. Different, Klaus says. Which is true and also meaningless. Were you scared? The kid asks. Every day, this satisfies him. The kid nods, goes back to cleaning his rifle. American rifle for the German army to fight against Russians, who used to be allies fighting against Germans who are now allies. War is just moving pieces on a board. The pieces forget they're not supposed to make sense. Klaus completes training in early 1956. Gets assigned to a unit stationed near the East German border. Watching, waiting, ready for an invasion that probably won't come. But might. He's 33 years old. A soldier again, wearing a different uniform, but carrying the same weight. Franz visits in the spring. He didn't join the Bundeswehr. Once was enough, he says. He's happy with his mechanic job, his family, his normal life. They drink beer at a bar near the base, talk about everything and nothing. Old friends with too much history between them? You think we'll have to fight again? Franz asks. Klaus shrugs. Hope not, but they're preparing us like we will. Against the Soviets this time. Yeah. Funny how that works. Franz laughs. No humor in it. We spent years fighting with them against the Allies. Now we're allied with the former Allies against the former Allies. Makes your head spin. It does. Klaus has stopped trying to make sense of it. Politics is just chess with people's lives. The people on the board don't get to make the rules. Over the next few years, Klaus settles into military routine. Drills, exercises, standing guard at the border. Watching the Soviet zone through binoculars. Wondering if the guys on the other side are former Wehrmacht, too. Guys who surrendered to the Soviets instead of the Americans. Guys who survived the camps, and now they're wearing Red Army uniforms. Probably 1 in 3 died, but 2 in 3 lived. Some of those survivors are over there right now, looking back at Klaus through their own binoculars. Both sides staffed with former enemies. Both sides pretending this makes sense. Klaus gets promoted to Feldwebel. Sergeant, same rank he ended the war with. He trains younger soldiers. Teaches them tactics he learned fighting against the Allies. Tactics that didn't work then, but might work now against a different enemy. The kids listen seriously. They believe. They think this time will be different. This time Germany is defending itself legitimately. This time they're the good guys. Klaus doesn't correct them. What would he say? That there are no good guys? That everyone who fights becomes complicit in something? That uniforms and flags are just decorations on the same ugly machine? They'll learn or they won't. Experience is the only teacher that matters. In 1961, the Berlin Wall goes up overnight. Concrete and barbed wire splitting the city, east and west, communist and capitalist. Former allies, now permanent enemies. Klaus's unit goes on high alert. Tensions spike. For a few weeks, everyone thinks this is it. The war everyone's been preparing for, round 2. But nothing happens. The wall stands, people stop trying to cross. The border hardens. The Cold War stays cold. Klaus stands guard and thinks about walls. Physical walls, mental walls. The walls people build to separate clean history from dirty history. Good soldiers from bad soldiers. Following orders from choosing to follow orders. Everyone building walls. Keeping the uncomfortable truths on the other side. He serves until 1963. 8 years in the Bundeswehr. Then he retires at 40. Full pension, honorable service. He's done his part again. Klaus moves back to Hamburg. Gets a job at a bakery, full circle. His father's trade, the shop isn't the same one. That one's still rubble. But the work is familiar, comforting. Bread doesn't care about your past. He marries in 1965. Woman named Greta, widow. Her first husband died in the war. Soviet front, she doesn't talk about it much. Neither does Klaus. They build a life on mutual understanding that some things are better left buried. They have a daughter in 1967, Ava, beautiful kid. Grows up in a Germany that's prosperous and peaceful and divided. She learns about the war in school, but it's history to her. Ancient history, not real. Not personal. Klaus never tells her much. What would he say? Asterisk, I killed people who were trying to kill me. I wore a uniform that represented atrocities. I got lucky and survived while better men died. She doesn't need that weight. Franz was right. The point is carrying it, so the next generation doesn't have to. The years pass. Hamburg rebuilds completely. The scars get covered. The ruins get cleared. By the 70s, you'd barely know there was a war. Unless you're old enough to remember, then you know. You always know. Klaus gets letters sometimes from other survivors. Franz writes regularly. Doing well, grandkids now. Living a good life in Munich. Otto writes once. The guy with frostbite scars from Soviet camps. He's in Australia. Immigrated after the war. Couldn't stand being in Germany anymore. Too many ghosts. He's happy there. Warm weather, fresh start, as fresh as anyone gets. Klaus never hears from Karl or Heinrich. They're dead. Died in 1945 and 1946. Respectively, statistics in someone's casualty report. Names on memorials that nobody visits. In the 80s, Klaus retires from the bakery. He's 60, lived longer than he expected, longer than he probably deserved. He watches the world change. The Berlin Wall falls in 1989. Germany reunifies in 1990. Suddenly, it's one country again. Not occupied, not divided, just Germany. Klaus watches it on television, sees people celebrating, tearing down the wall, dancing in the streets. It's beautiful and strange. And he's happy for them, but part of him wonders if they understand. If they know how fragile all of this is, how easily it could go wrong again. How thin the line is between civilization and barbarism. Probably not. They're young. They think the past is dead. They think we've learned our lessons. Maybe they're right. Klaus hopes they're right. In the 90s, Klaus starts writing things down. Memories, not a memoir, just notes. Moments he doesn't want to forget. Things he needs to remember. He writes about surrendering in 1945. About the American soldiers who gave him cigarettes. About the farm in Georgia where he picked cotton and watched movies. About Carl dying in a minefield. Heinrich starving in France. Otto's frostbite scars. He writes about the tribunals. The categories, lesser offender, the arbitrariness of judgment. He writes about joining the Bundeswehr, the irony of wearing a uniform again. Training soldiers. Watching the border. He writes about luck. How his entire life was determined by random chance. By American tanks arriving instead of Soviet tanks. By being captured in April instead of March. By being healthy enough to survive. But not so healthy they sent him somewhere worse. Luck. Just luck. Nothing more. His daughter finds the notebooks after Klaus dies in 2003. He's 80, heart attack. Quick and painless. Better than most soldiers get. Eva reads the notebooks. Learns about her father's war for the first time. The real story. Not the cleaned up version. Not the myth. She's shocked, then sad, then understanding. She finally gets why he never talked about it, why he carried that weight, why he stared out windows, sometimes with the look she couldn't interpret. She keeps the notebooks, passes them to her own children eventually. Klaus's grandchildren, they need to know, not to carry the guilt. That's not their burden, but to understand, to remember. To make sure it doesn't happen again. History isn't clean. It's not simple. It's not black and white. The Geneva Convention was supposed to protect prisoners. Sometimes it did. Sometimes it didn't. International law is just words when power decides otherwise. The Allies violated the rules, used German prisoners for forced labor. Let some starve. Put them in danger. These violations don't excuse what Germany did. They're separate failures, separate crimes. Good people can do bad things in bad circumstances. Following orders is real, but it's not a complete defense. Survival doesn't equal innocence. Luck doesn't equal virtue. Klaus knew all of this, carried all of this. The weight of being complicit, the weight of being lucky, the weight of surviving while others didn't. He did what he could with it. Lived as well as possible, raised a daughter, tried to be decent, tried to contribute something to balance the scales, knowing the scales would never fully balance. That's all anyone can do, carry the weight, learn the lessons. Try to be better than your circumstances demanded. History is painted in shades of gray, with definite areas of clear morality, clear good, and clear evil. But also vast spaces of complexity, of impossible choices, of humans being human in inhuman situations. The lessons of the darkest chapters are simple and hard. People are capable of terrible things. Systems can turn regular humans into monsters. Survival is random. Justice is imperfect. Guilt is complicated. And sometimes the only thing separating life from death is which tank column arrived first on a random morning in April. Klaus's story is one story among millions. Unique and also completely ordinary. Just another soldier who survived, who faced judgment, who carried weight, who tried to build something in the ruins. The weight never fully goes away, but eventually you learn to carry it. You wake up, you work, you love who you can. You do what good is possible. You try to leave the world slightly better than you found it. Even when the world you found was burning. Even when you helped light some of the fires. You carry it all, the guilt and the luck and the memory. You carry it until you can't anymore. Then you pass it to the next generation, not as burden, but as lesson, as reminder, as warning, asterisk never again. That's what they say? What they always say. Klaus hoped they meant it. Let yourself sink deeper now into your pillow, into the safety of your bed, into the peace of a world Klaus helped survive to rebuild. The weight is not yours to carry. The lessons are there to learn from. But for now, just rest, just breathe, just let the history wash over you and away.